We've already covered the many deaths of Disney villains, but what about the villain bloodshed in the Pixar universe? Though there aren't as many instances among these films, with many of the antagonists surviving or even doing well after the conflict.
Hi! You'll like Amy. She's an artist.
There are a handful that get taken out for good, but the question is, which of these deaths is the most brutal? I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and this is Pixar Villain Deaths, Gruesome to Most Gruesome.
Prepare to die.
For this ranking, we're going to be going by the amount of suffering and terror, as well as how long it lasted on screen, starting with the least gruesome and working our way up to the most, starting with being deactivated. We're going to place Otto as the least traumatic, though his actions leading up to his deactivation were stressful to say the least. He was the one that basically ran all of humanity after they fled to space, content with just letting the captains think they were in charge.
I'm the captain of the Axiom. We are going home today.
And was not going to back down from his post just because a stubborn bot like Wally showed up with a plant.
Give me the plan.
After trying again and again to send off the plant and attempting to crush Wally in the process, the captain was able to fight back and switch off the device.
Otto, you are relieved of duty.
Stabbed. The dragon from Onward wasn't given much consciousness, only existing to fulfill a curse. While stabbing is normally a frightening way to meet your end,
Time to crush a curse!
it wasn't as if they were impaling flesh and muscle with this creature. What they were attacking was a collection of concrete, iron, and a magical core keeping it all together. Falling. We've all had dreams of falling at some point and have been jolted from a dead sleep in fear of our lives. For Charles Muntz, this feeling was all he knew in his final moments. However, it's not easy to feel bad for the guy.
An old man taking his house to Paradise Falls.
Leading up to this, he had been attempting to kill an innocent child and a man just trying to fulfill his wife's dream.
Nice talking with you.
It was actually pretty impressive that Charles hadn't fallen the entire time he was chasing Carl. However, we still aren't placing it as the most gruesome on the list, since the height Charles was falling from meant that he would have blacked out long before he hit the ground. And even if he didn't, his abrupt impact with the ground would have put him out of his misery quick. We can't imagine that it was a peaceful way to go, but it could have been far more brutal. Crushed. Mor'du was finally taken out when a large stone pillar fell on top of him as he lunged towards Merida, but he was slowly dying long before then, presumably only able to keep going due to the curse placed upon him.
Strength of 10 men. Fate be changed.
It's unclear how long Mor'du existed, but we do see in the film that his former home had become no more than ruins when Merida came across them. The story of his family and how he gained power was written off by most as a legend,
Lit like the tapestry.
and even Merida's mother calls it an ancient kingdom. We feel this is worth mentioning when ranking his death, since it meant that Mor'du had suffered for an unknown amount of time before he was finally given peace. We see him littered with scars, arrows extended from his body, and that his bear form was beaten horribly all over. Being taken down at last, he was able to finally gain peace, his spirit thanking Merida and Eleanor before disappearing. Though he had a horrible descent into madness, his death came as a relief, and so we placed him towards the lesser part of our list. Ernesto we're placing next. Once one of the most beloved celebrities of Mexico, he met his end being crushed by a giant bell during a performance. A quick enough death, but we have to place him towards the top of our list since he had to experience this death not once, but twice. And during the second time around, he was given the added terror of being picked up and tossed around like a plaything.
Nice kitty.
Having to endure that while also being surrounded by countless lights and the shouts of thousands of fans would have made the experience even more disorienting, really laying it on how he was no longer in control. And as we can see from the end of the film, Ernesto is deemed unfit to be remembered in the living world due to his lies and deceit, and so meets what is considered to be the final death, disappearing for good in a painful fashion. Ripped apart. Syndrome was one of the most relatable Pixar villains to be created. His choice to take up villainy made sense to a lot of viewers, and that is part of the reason his end was such a hard one to watch. All he had wanted was to be a hero, and instead he had felt shunned by the one man he admired more than anyone else.
Fly home, buddy. I work alone.
Now, there's a couple of things that we wanted to point out discussing Syndrome's death. First is that, as fans of the franchise will know, he was taken down by being sucked into an engine of an aircraft. Exactly the thing Edna warned Bob about earlier in the movie.
No capes.
Stating that was the reason she refused to design supersuits with capes anymore. Second is that it was a bit of karmic justice that Syndrome was ripped apart in the engine and it resulted in the aircraft exploding. We say this because of how Syndrome had tried to take out Bob's will to fight on.
Too late.
15 years too late.
Almost killing the Super's entire family through having an attack sent on the plane Helen was flying. And just before he was killed, he had been trying to inflict more damage to the family by kidnapping their youngest. Though Syndrome was merciless in his pursuit to finally be seen as a hero to the public and a threat to real supers, he was defeated in a very satisfying way. But there was still no denying the fear on his face as he tried to claw his way back up, and how painful that initial slicing of the blade would have been. Finally, we're also going to list Hopper's death in this category, and also give it the gold medal for most gruesome Pixar death. He's one of the earliest Pixar villains and, as such, has a special place among longtime fans. His ruling over the ants and his own gang of grasshoppers was to be both feared and sort of admired. Since he was seen as such a powerhouse, it was a shock to Flick when he learned the gang leader was terrified of birds.
Hopper's afraid of birds.
Now, the first bird that Hopper came across at the colony was revealed to be built by the ants, under the assumption it would scare him enough to leave.
Bird, it's a bird!
It had almost worked, but ended terribly with PT setting the fake creature up in flames. But Hopper was ultimately able to be taken down by Flick's quick thinking, with the ant luring the gang leader towards the nest and Hopper's guard being taken down by the fake he had encountered previously.
Hello, girl.
This had to make the top of our list since it had some brutal factors to it. Earlier in the film, it was made clear just how much birds are feared by the bugs and insects around, with the creature nearly eating Dot and the rescue circus team when they go in after her. And there was a lot of faith put into the fake bird since it was such a merciless hunter among the small beings. It was the only known thing to intimidate their oppressor to the point where they were confident that he would never return.
The birds eat the grasshoppers. Hey, like the one that nearly ate you?
When Hopper does finally come face to face with his greatest fear, the audience is left in a state of suspense when it takes him a moment to realize it wasn't another trick. Hopper's death was full of fear as he was left to recognize the threat for what it was and try to flee. Unable to simply fly away due to the rain being a hazard at that moment and the bird closing in quickly since he was so close to the nest. And then we finally see Hopper's final moments not only from the outside but from Hopper's perspective, which isn't something we typically get to experience. In these last few seconds, we see a frightened Hopper trying desperately to break free and stay clear of the young beaks of the young birds in the nest jumping to nip at him before finally we're given a view of a hungry mouth. Not only was Hopper taken out by the one creature he feared more than anything else, but wasn't just a single bird as we thought it would be. Hopper was ripped apart by an entire family, his last moments being spent as sustenance and really driving home how far he fell from grace. From being a ruthless thug and leader to bird feed. But what do you think? Which Pixar villains had the most gruesome deaths? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to hit that notification bell and binge our Good to Evil playlist.